I watched Diana blossom from a shy young girl, 18 years old. I watched the years pass by. She was pushed in the deep end and told to swim. She was told to survive. She was never taught to survive. She learned very quickly. And through the romantic years, and then through the power dressing years, and then becoming an icon, I watched all of that. She tore out pages from that dusty old book and she rewrote those rules. She changed the royal family forever.
The Princess of Wales was a new kind of royal. She carried out her duties with elegance and style, just like other members of the royal family. But there was a difference. She wasn't stuffy, responding to people naturally, and the people took her to their hearts.
In the summer of 1980, the Queen told me that a young girl was coming to stay for the weekend. Will you meet her at the front door and show her a room? Of course, Your Majesty. So I'm standing in the front hallway of Balmoral Castle on the black and white tiles, waiting for this car to arrive. And out of the car comes a shy young girl that nobody knew who she was. She had one little suitcase in the back. Is that all you've brought with you? You're here for the weekend. You have to go to hunting, shooting, you have to go to the Gillies Ball, tea parties, lunch parties, and that's all you have. She says, will it do? I said, I think we'd better take you to her room and find out. I showed her to her room. Will you stay for a while and have a chat with me? I'm completely out of my depth, she said. And as I closed the door that day, I noticed the name on the door.
Lady Di, the name she would be known by throughout the world, by now shared a flat in Kensington with 3 girlfriends. News of her romance came as a shock to them. She'd said she was going out with Charles Renfrew. Baron of Renfrew is one of Prince Charles's titles.
It was 1977. Charles came to stay as a friend of my sister Sarah's for a shoot. We sort of met in a park hill.
Well, I remember thinking what a very jolly and amusing and attractive 16-year-old she was. And having great fun and fancy and full of life and everything.
He was the world's most eligible bachelor, a magnet for admiring and aspiring young women. One name mentioned more than most was Princess Astrid of Luxembourg, even though she was a Catholic. Then a new name emerged.
Lady Diana Spencer.
Well, Diana was from quite an aristocratic background. She wasn't obviously royalty. She was termed quite unkindly a commoner, although she was constantly rubbing shoulders with royalty because her childhood was based in part up in Sandringham, so she was often on the estate with the royals. Her sister had gone out with Prince Charles, so she knew the family well, and she was essentially circulating in those sort of quite high society circles. But it was actually when Charles had been going out with Diana's older sister Sarah that they first became acquainted with each other, and they had a little bit of a rapport. Obviously, she was considerably younger than him and quite a naive, I think, shy 16-year-old when they first kind of clocked eyes on each other. And gradually, I think this friendship blossomed, and it soon became apparent that this young girl had stolen the prince's affections, and the press got onto it and were following her around somewhat at the flat she lived in London.
Are you coping with all the press attention? Well, as you can see, you can tell.
Are you bearing up with it quite well, though? Because it must be quite a strain with all of us after you.
Well, it is, naturally.
And it soon became apparent that actually they had become an item, and it was quite a surprise, of course, because Charles had been dating her sister.
Lady Diana was back at the Pimlico kindergarten where she teaches this morning, but polite as ever, she was saying nothing about her weekend with Prince Charles at Sandringham to the assembled press corps. Instead, she drove off in her brand new mini metro with a smile, though I managed to have a word with her later outside her Kensington flat.
Is there any possibility of any announcement of your marriage in the near future? Can you tell me? Can you tell me if there's any possibility?
I'm not going to say anything, babe.
Right, but Prince Charles did give us a hint himself. He said we wouldn't have to wait too long.
Careful.
He said we wouldn't have to wait too long.
Inside, Lady Diana was facing up to a future she could hardly have dreamt of.
Yesterday you were a nanny looking after children. Now you're about to marry the Prince of Wales, and one day you would, in all likelihood, be Queen. It's a tremendous change for someone, if I may say, of 19 to make all of a sudden, the transition.
It is, but I've had a small run out to it all in the last 6 months. And next to Prince Charles and I can't go wrong. He's there with me.
Difficult to find the right sort of word, isn't it, really? Just delighted and happy. And I'm amazed that she's been brave enough to take me on.
And I suppose in love.
Of course.
Whatever in love means.
The months between the engagement and the wedding were hectic, often exhilarating, sometimes trying. She had to learn the restrictions of royal life. Never again would she be able to walk quietly down to the shops. Prince Charles had to keep the engagements he'd accepted before the announcement of the engagement, and this meant some separation. Diana had to accept this and do her best to hide her feelings. She also had to master the royal technique of remembering your position and keeping station. All this was very new and strange for her, but she was learning fast. She was a hit with the crowds wherever she went. She especially enjoyed meeting children. She made frequent trips to see her wedding dress being made. Exactly what it would look like became a national obsession. The weeks before the wedding were happy ones. The couple attended many events as wedding fever gripped the nation. The more she attended, the better she coped.
We'll have more details on some of those stories later on for you, but for the moment, let's concentrate on the story that will dominate the day. In 2.5 hours' time, the procession sets off from Buckingham Palace, and the route is already packed with crowds to watch it go by.
So off they went, all up the Mall. The crowd was suitably noisy, but there was a sense of waiting. In their book today, the bride was the star of the show.
You saw that woman became a royal princess in this cathedral behind me. St. Paul's Cathedral was the setting. The most watched event in human history was her wedding day. And we still look at that footage today. The longest train in royal history, the most creased dress in royal history. But the princess was brimming with hope and love for the future. She fell in love with her prince.
I, Diana Frances.
I, Diana Frances,
Take thee, Charles Philip Arthur George.
Take thee, Philip Charles Arthur George.
To my wedded husband.
To my wedded husband.
To have and to hold.
To have and to hold.
From this day forward.
From this day forward.
According to God's holy law.
According to God's holy law.
And thereto I give thee my troth.
And thereto I give thee my troth.
I remember the wedding of Prince Charles and Lady Diana Spencer very well because I was at Buckingham Palace. I was working for the Queen, and the Queen said to me, "You can watch it on my telly. So take the corgis for a walk in the garden and then watch the telly and you'll know when we're coming back."
With this ring,
I thee wed.
I thee wed.
With my body.
With my body,
I thee honor.
I thee honor.
And all my worldly goods with thee I share.
All thy goods with thee I share.
In the name of the Father.
In the name of the Father.
And of the Son.
And of the Son.
And of the Holy Ghost.
And of the Holy Ghost.
Amen.
I was responsible for the top table, which was the bride's table, the bride and groom, and of course the Queen and Prince Philip, and the bridesmaids. So I was waiting for the bride to come back. She'd appeared on the balcony of Buckingham Palace. And then, at the end of a very long red carpeted corridor, I noticed this ball of white racing towards me. And I realized it was Princess Diana. She'd rolled her train up into a ball, tucked it under her arm. She had her slippers in one hand, and she was racing down this corridor, lined with windows. And the diamonds of the Spencer family tiara were glinting in the sunshine. And she was racing towards me. Just me and her in one corridor. She was like a galleon in full sail. What a picture of hope and happiness and love. She had it all. And she said to me later, I couldn't eat a thing, Paul. My stomach was in knots. I was just totally wound up by the day, by the excitement, by the spectacle. She says, but you know, the most wonderful thing was walking down the aisle of St. Paul's Cathedral with my father. She says, but did you ever look at the footage of that? I said, I've seen it many times. She says, next time you look at it, watch me. She says, can't you see me looking from side to side? Can you see me doing that? Do you know what I'm doing? I'm looking for her. I'm looking for Camilla. And she was there. She was even at my wedding. So this spectre of Camilla was always there in the princess's life.
Madam, how are you enjoying married life?
Highly recommend.
How do you like Balmoral as a place?
Have you cooked a breakfast yet?
I don't eat breakfast.
Everybody was saying, good luck, and I hope everything goes well, and how lucky you are to be engaged to such a lovely lady. And my goodness, I was lucky enough to marry her. And we had many, many messages. Amazing what ladies do when your back's turned.
The cameras often caught touches of tenderness between them in the earlier days. No matter how publicly occasioned, it seemed that Prince Charles had finally met the girl of his dreams, and they didn't try to conceal their feelings for each other. It appeared that the couple were very much in love. In September 1984, their second child was born, Prince Harry. In the 2 years since William had come into the world, Princess Diana had matured. She was now relaxed and confident, both as a princess and as a mother.
Prince Charles would say to her, "Well, I married you, I made you a princess. You weren't born royal. I'm the royal." So it would peeve him when on royal visits people would be shouting on one side of the street, "We want Diana, we want Diana." And I think in some interviews he actually did say, "I wish I could split my wife in half to do both sides of the street because they don't actually want me."
The Di mania continued. Prince Charles was proud of his wife, but it was now becoming obvious that the crowds wanted to see her more than him. It's been suggested that the prince was caught completely off his guard by this, and that his pride became mixed with a twinge of jealousy. He joked about it in public.
I haven't yet worked out a method of splitting my wife in half.
Well, Charles was so used to having all the attention on him, which it had been since he was born. He didn't like the idea that they walked down the street, say, when they were doing a royal engagement, and the crowd were calling, "Diana, Diana." So he felt surplus.
I've come to the conclusion that really it would have been far easier to have had 2 wives.
He didn't know what to do or say, and yes, it was a form of jealousy, yes, it was.
To have covered both sides of the street. And I could have walked down the middle, directing the operation.
Well, Charles was a very old-fashioned, very respectful, charming man. But he has got a very short temper, and if he loses his temper, he's then incredibly sorry. But because of who he is and the life that he's led, he is used to getting his own way, and he's used to getting his own way quickly.
This is a man who's been born to be king. This is a man who has been treated from the very beginning as a god, suddenly being eclipsed by this woman. He wasn't very happy.
Sorry, I didn't see you there. I wish you that. You're hugging the lamb. I'm hugging it. I'm hugging it all the time. Lovely to see you. So are you on your way shopping? No. Lucky me. I see the sun out. Change. Wish you luck. Did you enjoy your holiday? Go to St. The boys did, I take it. Yes. Nice and fat. Yes. Right. Made our day. Bye-bye.
Diana had been the fairy tale princess, and her marriage to Charles was the public were absolutely ecstatic. And when Diana then became pregnant and announced she was pregnant, again the public were absolutely thrilled. This was a huge excitement. And people camped for days outside the hospital where she gave birth, which was St Mary's, Paddington. Media were camped outside for days, waiting for the announcement. And finally it came, and people were there with champagne bottles, and it was a great occasion.
Absolutely gaga.
Take him time. What have you seen? What have you seen?
During this time, of course, Diana was visiting Balmoral and Sandringham and all the royal residences, and actually got to know me very well. I remember her showing me the honeymoon pictures. I remember her telling me that she was carrying another baby, which was Harry. She was at Balmoral wearing a very beautiful tartan evening dress for the Gillies ball, and she pushed me into the dining room. "Put your hand on my tummy," she said. I said, "No, I can't do that. You're a royal princess." She took my hand and placed it on her tummy. "Can you feel that?" she said. And a little kick. She says, "It's a boy." "You shouldn't have told me that." That is a state secret. Now, if it gets out, you'll blame me. She says, "But I'm trusting you with that secret." It was the first time she'd actually trusted me. She began trusting me with more, telling me that her marriage wasn't all it should be. "I need somebody like you, Paul. I need someone like you for the future. I've got no one I can trust in. Would you think about leaving the Queen and come and work for me?" Now, I had the best job in the world. I wasn't about to leave the Queen of England. "If you come and live with me, I'll give you a beautiful cottage in the countryside at Highgrove. And you and your 2 children and your wife can grow with my family and William and Harry, and we'll be just one big happy family. Think about it. Life would be much better for you. The standard would be higher." I thought about it and thought it was the right future for my family. Living and working with the Queen was far more easy than living with Diana. With the Queen, we always knew that her life ran with routines and protocols and timetables. We knew that breakfast would be 9 o'clock, lunch would be 1 o'clock, tea would be 5 o'clock, and dinner would be 8:15. It was the same every day. It's Groundhog Day at Buckingham Palace. With Diana, anything could happen. No routine, no timetables, nothing. We might skip lunch, we might be shopping, we could be doing anything during the day. So life was more exciting with Diana. But the difference between the two worlds was I always knew where I was with the Queen. I always knew where the line was in the sand. I knew when not to cross that line, and I knew to stay and bow. I was a servant. With Diana, it was, "Come and sit down, have a cup of tea with me, have a cup of coffee. Don't just stand there." I used to stand every morning waiting for the princess to come through from her dressing room. And every morning, standing there with a half a grapefruit and a cup of black coffee, I'd bow and say, "Good morning, Your Royal Highness." "For goodness sake," she'd say, "when are you going to stop doing that? It's just me and you in the room. Sit down, have a cup of coffee with me and tell me what's been going on." That was her world. Diana did things differently because you never know what's going to happen from one minute to the next. I'd have a note on my desk to say, "Please call me at 7:30. Or it could be 7:15, or it could be 6:15. We never knew from one day to the next.
Well, I think Princess Diana, like the rest of the world, was caught up in the fairy tale that was her own royal relationship, and she was willing it to work, as was everyone else. I think very quickly the reality set in that she didn't have much in common with Prince Charles, and actually they were very different people with very different interests, and that's when the cracks started appearing, and people have suggested, and we now know that that was very soon after they returned from their honeymoon, so very early on in the marriage.
Well, I used to say that Diana was a high school dropout and Charles was a university lecturer. I mean, Diana, they were so different, and obviously that can work very well, but she was very, very young and she'd had no experience of life. And although she'd lived on the Sandringham estate and knew the royal family, she didn't really know the royal family. And unless she didn't really know what it would be like to be married into them.
The turning point came at the start of the official visit to Germany, when the prince seemed to go out of his way to demonstrate his affection for his wife.
My wife came here for the first time in 1985, when she visited one of the British regiments stationed here in her capacity as one of the more glamorous colonels in the British Army.
That was enough to convince the press that whatever they'd reported before, the royal marriage was in good health again. And the message was reinforced a fortnight later when the royal couple visited the victims of the Enniskillen bomb blast. The whole affair seems to have blown the froth off the fairy tale romance, but since their marriage 6 years ago, it's only Prince Charles's popularity that's suffered.
I think she thought it was all going to be sort of wonderful. So she'd been disappointed from the very beginning. And she had this vision of Charles, which wasn't really him at all. I mean, and then she started to find Charles very dull. And he found her stupid. I mean, she had a very quick wit, but she wasn't well read. She wasn't really educated, and Charles was highly educated.
My years at Westheath were certainly very happy ones indeed. I made many friends who I often see, and in spite of what Miss Rudge and my other teachers may have thought at the time, I did actually learn something. Though you would never have known by my O-level results.
And all his friends were much, much older. So he started to dump his friends. And Diana's friends were all much, much younger. And so they started to lead separate lives very, very early on.
Now, the royal marriage was falling apart, and I was Diana's man, placed strategically at Highgrove, placed there to keep the house in order, but also to be there for Diana, to be there as a rock, she later called me. That's what I was there for. I was there to support her, to be there as a friend, as a confidant, and a butler. My role became more and more and more as the year passed. And as the years escalated towards the end of her life, she called me her rock. She said, "You're the only man I've ever really trusted."
Diana as a person was, as I said at the very beginning, was about as normal as you're going to get. She was very considerate, always wanted to know people's birthdays, you know, enjoyed the company of her own friends. And the number of occasions that we would ever go on a public engagement, for most royals, it's shaking hands with people behind a metal barrier. It's sort of a hand comes across and hello, and, you know, you get pushed back. With Diana, it was different. And I remember one incident in Manchester, and we were walking down some street in Manchester that had been terraced off with these metal railings. And we were walking down and she's chatting away, and suddenly she sees this elderly woman with a walking stick about 3 people back. And she said, "What are you doing over there?" And this sort of woman with this sort of manicure next to her, she said, "I want to say hello to you." She said, "Oh, just a minute." And got this, she said, "Get that policeman, Ken, and get that lady to come through here." So the lady, you know, came through and, you know, started chatting away there. And she said, "Look, you ought to get a warmer coat than that." So sort of suddenly, out of nowhere, you're getting this sort of princess that's now more concerned about somebody else in the crowd than herself. This was typical Diana. I saw that on so many occasions because she felt it was part of her duty rather than just turn up, shake and push a few people back.
I was with her for 10 years in total and began traveling with her around the world, to Angola, to Bosnia, to far-reach countries, searching out people who were less fortunate than we were, people who needed their plight heightened by an incredible icon of our times. So I witnessed that at first hand. I remember going to a hospital in Bosnia where a little girl had been blown up by a landmine. She'd been into the field to retrieve her brother's football, and she'd been blown up and lost her legs. She was critically ill. and the princess sat by her bed and held her hand, and this little girl couldn't understand English. And the princess left. The little girl opened her eyes and said to the nurse in her language, "I've just seen an angel." And then she died.
Especially now, as Christmas brings its own painful stresses to so many people in need. The sick, the old, the handicapped, and the homeless. The lonely, the confused, and the simply unloved, who are needing your help more than ever.
And that's a point to which I'd often refer, because that one moment of humanity changed my life. And I saw the princess in a different light. I saw her as beautiful inside as she was on the outside.
The Princess of Wales was a new kind of royal. She carried out her duties with elegance and style, just like other members of the royal family. But there was a difference. She wasn't stuffy, responding to people naturally, and the people took her to their hearts.
The rest of the royal family and the royal household, they treated Diana as if she was just another gal. In fact, they didn't give her much consideration at all. I did notice that one day, going through the drawing room, the old Queen Mother, she passed the magazine table and Diana's face was on the front of Hello Magazine or something. And as she walked past the table, she flipped the magazine over onto its backside and carried on walking. That to me said, she's not really accepted. They don't like it. She's beginning to outshine even the senior members of the royal family. This is dangerous territory.
The Queen and Diana weren't pally-pally, because Diana, she was too young. She didn't want to sit. She said, "I don't want to have dinner with Brenda." She used to call her Brenda. In those days, there was a satirical story that used to run in Private Eye every week. The Queen was Brenda, and I think Prince Philip was Stavros. So Diana was very quick-witted, but she didn't want to have dinner with the Queen on her own, because she said, I wouldn't know what to say to her. I think Prince Philip, when he heard she was coming, he'd go into another room. So he just didn't want the confrontation with her. But at the beginning, yes, he had a very good relationship with her, and he looked after her. And he made sure that she sat next to him at dinner, and he brought her into the conversation. He could see how nervous she was of the whole situation. And I think the Queen really let him deal with it.
She's painting a very tragic picture of how she was pitched into the royal family without any form of help, without any form of rehearsal, and how they were not able to help her evolve and grow up, and weren't able to appreciate what she was trying to do or give her lessons which she very much needed.
It was difficult for me to tread the path between Prince Charles and Princess Diana. Now, Diana arrived every weekend with the boys on Friday afternoon and left every Sunday. But someone else occupied that space in between. And I learned to serve two royal mistresses. One, Princess of Wales, and the other, Mrs. Parker Bowles.
Well, Charles was in love with Camilla from a very early age. You know, when he was still in the Navy, he fell in love with Camilla. She was funny, she was a great rider, and she made him laugh. And I think that she's very, very attractive to both men and women because of her personality. She's got a wonderful personality. And you know, when Charles first met her, I mean, she didn't care what she looked like, but, you know, she was a great horsewoman. She was really sporty. And I suppose she was a challenge, too, because, you know, she was basically in love with Andrew Parker Bowles. So I think she had a lot of ingredients that Charles really, really fell in love with, and he never really fell out of love with her. So it is a very romantic story.
It was impossible to do this balancing act between the prince and the princess, the prince during the week and the princess at the weekend, and then have someone else pop in to this ménage à trois. It was incredibly difficult because the princess would ring me up from London and say, "Where's Prince Charles tonight, Paul? Where's the Prince of Wales?" "He's out for dinner, Your Royal Highness." "Where is he?" "I've no idea." "Of course you know where he is. You always know where he is." "Who's he got for dinner tomorrow night? I hear he's got a dinner party. Who's coming?" "Don't ask me. Please ask him. Don't put me in the middle." This was still a secret. I was keeping this secret for both the prince and the princess. Until, of course, it became intolerable.
But I mean, in Diana's heart, she never wanted to leave Charles. But she was desperate. She'd had enough, and it was just so unpleasant. Although she knew she didn't want to leave Charles, being with him was worse than leaving him. So yes, she did want to leave him, but she didn't want to get divorced. She always hoped they would get it right in the end.
The woman at the centre of these latest royal revelations, Camilla Parker Bowles, was today at home with her family in Wiltshire. It's claimed in the second extract from the Jonathan Dimbleby biography, which is published in today's Sunday Times, that she and the Prince of Wales have had 3 separate affairs.
Did you try to be faithful and honourable to your wife when you took on the vow of marriage?
Yes, absolutely.
And you were?
Yes. Until it became irretrievably broken down.
Do you now hope that this issue and expect this issue to go away? Is that what you hope will now happen?
Well, it would be nice if it did, from everybody's point of view. I mean, I don't think many other people have to go through this constant attention, not just me, but others, you know, when their marriages break down.
And those jewels. Right. The Prince of Wales had just been on TV to admit adultery with Camilla Parker Bowles. And the princess that evening was due to go out to the Serpentine Gallery to see her old friend Lord Palumbo and open his new exhibition. "This is what you're going to wear," I said. "I can't fit into it." "Yes, you can. Put it on." So she slipped it on. Now, to complement that, I think we should have the pearl choker and the sapphire. That's all you need. High heels and those jewels. Right, she put them on and she looked $1 million. "Remember, when you go out there," I said, "you stride, you hold your head high, you smile, you engage, firm handshake. Say to yourself, I am Diana, Princess of Wales, and I am here to stay."
We can't prove that Diana knew she would eclipse Prince Charles in the headlines the next day, but we do know that she told her stylist that she wanted to look like $1 million.
I was told a long time ago I'd backed the loser. I'd gone with the one who would be forgotten. And here we are, 20 years later. We're still talking about her because Diana has become an icon. We're talking about her because she changed the rule book. She tore out pages from that dusty old book and she rewrote those rules. She changed the royal family forever. She changed the rules for the women she'd never meet. She changed the rules for Catherine, so that she would have a better life, a better passage. And whoever Harry marries, she changed the rules for her too. So in a way, she's changing the rules for her children. Her children, William and Harry, are her legacy to the world.
We are getting one report from a news agency that
Diana, Princess of Wales, has been seriously injured in a car crash in Paris.
When the car she was travelling in collided with another vehicle in a tunnel. Within the last few moments, the Press Association in Britain, citing unnamed British sources, has reported that Diana, Princess of Wales, has died. This is not yet confirmed by any official source. So an unconfirmed source from the Press Association is that Diana, Princess of Wales, has died.
I have a terrible feeling that this is true.
Diana was the very essence of compassion, of duty, of style, of beauty. All over the world, she was a symbol of selfless humanity, a standard bearer for the rights of the truly downtrodden, a very British girl who transcended nationality, someone with a natural nobility who was classless, and who proved in the last year that she needed no royal title to continue to generate her particular brand of magic.
"36 years old, you don't expect your mother to die. Her untimely death catapulted those boys into the forefront of the royal family. They are the royal family's future.